Hello everyone. Today my topic is spinal cord injury, and this is under the subject of physiotherapy in neurological conditions. The spinal cord injury is a very low incidence, high cost disability requiring tremendous alterations in the individual's lifestyle. And in layman term or in very common terms, spinal cord injury is said to be any injury to the spinal cord, and it is broadly etiologically classified into two categories. One is the traumatic injury, which is due to some trauma to the spinal cord, and the other is non-traumatic injury, which is due to some other disease factor or any other factor to the spinal cord. Now, when we talk about spinal cord injury, we must know what is a neurological level. A neurological level is defined as the most caudal level of the spinal cord with normal motor and sensory functions on both the left and the right sides of the body. So, we have certain other topics actually. When we talk about spinal cord, we must know about the classification of spinal cord injury, we must know about the ASIA scale, we must know about the designation of lesion levels, but those are already been taken in some other subject of neurology in the previous semesters. So we'll directly jump into the features of the spinal cord injury. So whenever a patient undergoes a spinal cord injury, the first feature which is manifested is a spinal shock. A spinal shock is a period of areflexia, and it is a very transient period. It is characterized by absence of all reflex activities, flaccidity, and loss of sensation and motor function below the level of the lesion, that is below the neurological level. And it is usually for several days to several weeks. In addition to the loss of deep tendon reflexes, there is also loss of the bulbocavernous reflex, the cremasteric reflex, and a delayed plantar response. And one of the first indicators that the spinal shock is being resolved is the presence of a positive bulbocavernous reflex. And I'm very sure the students already know and have studied in the previous semesters about what a bulbocavernous reflex is and how is it tested. But so whenever we have to resolve a spinal shock, we need to test how to resolve a spinal shock. We can do a testing of the bulbocavernous reflex, and we can find out whether it is positive. If it's positive, that means the patient has now resolved the stage of spinal shock. The next very important is the motor and sensory impairments. So following a spinal cord injury, there will be either complete or partial loss of muscle function below the level of the lesion. Disruption of the ascending sensory fiber functions are being impaired, either completely or partially. So it depends basically upon the completeness of the lesion, the symmetry of the lesion, whether it is a transverse lesion or it is an oblique lesion. It also depends upon the neurological level. So there are certain factors upon which the motor and sensory impairment is dependent. Next is number 3, that is autonomic dysreflexia. Autonomic dysreflexia, or it is also sometimes known as an hyperreflexia, is a pathological autonomic reflex that typically occurs in lesions above T8. So this is a period, or this is a hyperreflexia. Now the next is about impaired temperature control. So whenever a patient undergoes a spinal cord injury, the hypothalamus can no longer control cutaneous blood flow or level of sweating. There is lack of sweating, which is often associated with excessive compensatory diaphoresis. Now, these changes in the thermal regulation results in body temperature, which is significantly influenced by the external environment. And so, patients must rely on a sensory input from the head and neck regions to assist in determining appropriate environmental temperatures. The next is respiratory impairment. So, respiratory function varies considerably, but it mainly depends upon the level of the lesion. With high spinal cord lesions, that is between C1 and C3, phrenic nerve innervation and spontaneous respiration are significantly impaired or lost. So whenever a patient has a high spinal cord injury, that is in the region of C1 or C2 or C3, there is complete respiratory impairment. And usually also sometimes an artificial ventilator may be required. But all patients with tetraplegia and those with high level paraplegia demonstrate some compromise in respiratory function. The level of respiratory impairment is directly related to the level of the lesion. there is a progressively greater loss of respiratory function with increasing higher lesion levels. So the more the higher the lesion is, the more progressive will be the respiratory impairment, and the lesser the lower the lesion is, the lesser will be the impairment in the respiratory function. The next is spasticity. The next is spasticity. So spasticity, it results from release of intact reflexes arcs from the CNS, and spasticity varies in the degree of severity. So there is actually a gradual increase in spasticity after the patient has undergone the spinal shock. So after spinal shock, there is a period of spasticity which develops. So it typically occurs below the level of the lesion after spinal shock has subsided, and then there is a gradual increase in spasticity during the first 6 months, and a plateau is usually reached 1 year after the injury. So this is about spasticity. The next is number 7, that is bowel and bladder dysfunction. So usually patients following SCI has serious complications to the bowel and bladder. We all know the spinal integration center for micturition is the conus medullaris, that is the end point. So primary reflex control originates from the sacral segments of S2, S3 and S4 within the conus medullaris. Now what happens is, after a spinal shock, one of the two types of bladder conditions will develop depending on location of the cord. If the patients with lesions that occur within the spinal cord is above the conus medullaris, typically they develop a spastic or a reflex bladder, or maybe an automatic bladder. Following a lesion of the conus medullaris or cauda equina, flaccid or non-reflex or autonomous bladder develops. So usually a spastic bladder contracts and reflexively empties in response to a certain level of filling pressure. And a flaccid or non-reflex bladder is essentially flaccid because there is no reflex action of the detrusor muscles. Next is about so this was about the bladder dysfunction. About the bowel dysfunction, as with bladder, the neurogenic bowel condition that develop after spinal shock subsides are of two types. So the spinal shock is there and the spinal shock is subsided, will develop spasticity and will also develop dysfunction of the bowel and bladder. So once the spinal shock is subsided, will develop the bowel and bladder dysfunction. So in terms of the bowel dysfunction, there are two types. In cord lesions above the conus medullaris, there is spastic or reflex bowel. That is the UMN type, upper motor neuron lesion. And in conus medullaris or cauda equina lesions, a flaccid or non-reflex bowel occurs. There is in lower motor neuron lesions. So this was about the bowel and bladder dysfunction. And of course, we know the sexual dysfunction is impaired in patients of spinal cord injury. So both in terms of male and in terms of female, the sexual dysfunction is being impaired. So this was about the features of the spinal cord injury, and depending upon these features, we also have some additional features. That is the indirect impairments of the complications, which includes the pressure sores, which includes deep vein thrombosis, which includes contractures or ectopic ossification. It also includes pain. So there are certain secondary complications also to spinal cord injury. So this, according to these features, will assess a patient of spinal cord injury, and depending upon the assessment, we'll go for the further proceedings. And in the next class, we'll be discussing about the PT management of a patient of spinal cord injury. So this was about the class of spinal cord injury and its clinical features. Thank you. Injury results in impaired or absent sensation below the level of the lesion. So the sensory fibers are affected. The